Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2014 Disruptive Innovation Festival. I'm Joe Isles, and I'll be your host for the next hour. We're joined today from our furthest location during the Disruptive Innovation Festival. I haven't checked it, but I'm fairly sure that no one's speaking to us from further away than Wellington, New Zealand. And I'm joined by Wendy and Stuart from Fab Lab Wellington. We've engaged a lot with the Fab Lab and Maker movement over the past 4 weeks at the festival. And one thing that's really come out of this discussion is the power of interdisciplinary thinking in the Maker movement and the impact that that could have on the future of jobs, the way we work, the way we make things. The circular economy tells us that we need to think in systems, and this is often on display in Fab Labs, and that's why today we have Wendy and Stu with us to explore this in some more depth. During the session, you can ask your questions using the Hangout app, so if you haven't done so already, click the link in the corner of the YouTube window to launch Hangouts and be part of the conversation. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can add your questions, and I can ask them to our guests. You can also use hashtag ThinkDiff on Twitter. We'll be keeping an eye on the Twitter feed during the session, and so if you can't access the questions on Google Hangouts, we can ask the questions, you can submit them through Twitter and we can ask them that way. But Wendy and Stu, I'd just like to get, in your own words, a bit of information, a bit of context about how you set up Fab Lab Wellington. Something that's, again, come through really strongly with the more we speak with Fab Labs is that they're all completely unique, autonomous, different funding structures, different priorities in terms of the projects they're worked on. How does it all work over in Wellington?
Oh, thanks, Joe. We started 2 years ago, but it was a culmination of a 2 years' work previously to that, where one of the instigators, the main instigator of Fab Lab Wellington, Chris Jackson, had become inspired when he was thinking in a post-industrial design context, that he made connections with the hacker movement, the maker movement, and the Fab Lab movement. And so he brought the idea to Massey University, the School of Design, and suggested very strongly that we were entirely suitable to join the Fab Lab network, and one of the reasons being that the Fab Lab network isn't a colonising force, as you say. Each Fab Lab is free to develop its own personality, although we have a range of shared capabilities, so that ideally each of us can go to another Fab Lab and feel completely comfortable with the systems and processes. By nature, our culture is developed because we're in New Zealand, because we're in Wellington, we're a diverse and shifting culture, and then also within the School of Design, which is also related to the School of Fine Arts. And so we've got this rather, unique and interesting mix of people that are engaging with the Fab Lab, and it is all about the people. And I'm sure that I know that John Molinar and Terence also mentioned that it's all about the people coming together and creating together and bouncing ideas off each other and sharing ideas.
So having access to all these tools within the College of Creative Arts that the Fab Lab offers, it was like perfect timing for us to start to really step things up a little bit more, get a lot more kind of technology into the university in relation to kind of rapid prototyping materials and emerging kind of digital technologies. So it was fantastic vision by Chris. And it was like perfect timing for College of Creative Arts to set up this new and innovative lab, which we were the first in Australasia, in fact, to have a.
We actually started with quite a roar because we hosted the Fab 8 conference, and I know that you went to Fab 10, which was a huge event. Obviously. Ours was huge also, but in a different way, and because we're so far away. But that was one of the really exciting parts of that, is that because New Zealand is so geographically isolated from a large proportion of the world's population, it was really exciting for us to have all these people from, you know, up to 40 countries around the world descend upon our space and just get hacking and making and talking and laughing and creating to start us off.
And you mentioned about the some of the other Fab Lab contributors to the festival, and just for the people who don't know how this session came about, when we were hearing from Terence Fagan from Piedmont Community College in the United States, he mentioned that he has the same set of tools virtually as you have over in Wellington, yet uses them for a different purpose, almost different set of priorities and different projects. So whereas he maybe looks at it from a more engineering standpoint, and it's really integrated with their engineering curriculum. For you, it's maybe more art and design. So can you just elaborate on that a bit? How the Fab Lab integrates with the educational institution, and specifically around the art and design side, because I think there's maybe a preconception that Fab Lab about kind of techie people who maybe are more interested in electronics or computers rather than a purely artistic side.
For sure. It's been really interesting in the two plus years that we've been operating, that a lot of our research staff in the fine arts area have engaged really strongly with the lab in terms of interacting with the electronics, getting an understanding of that, as well as some of the digital fabrications of physical objects. Programming where they might not necessarily pick up the entirety of the technical skills. They are working with other people who've got those sort of skills and working together. We have visual and communication design, we have industrial design, spatial design, textiles, fashion, fine arts, photography. There isn't any discipline that's not been represented in the space in that time, and quite often with some of our smaller projects can get together a little team of people, like little commercial projects that does, because of the breadth of experience and skills that we have here within the college, that we can take some of that and join it together for a particular little commercial project. We don't do anything really large, we're a research and development space. But that's been really exciting because we can offer to, you know, the community in a broader sense some really unique skills.
We also kind of integrate the tools into our teaching practices as well, and the tools are here, and we talk about tools, but it's a knowledge that it's the knowledge base that the Fab Lab network offers, which is really the power of things. So, for example, if we've integrated a kind of a piece of technology for the students to go and explore that is related to course content, they'll come into the lab, they'll be revealed the potential of that particular kind of process of that machine, and it's up to them to how they kind of take that further. But as soon as you find, as soon as one person starts engaging with it, that object or that result is taken back into the studio, and there's this buzz around it. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? And so it's this kind of little kind of tentacles reaching out. We feel very centralized, but having disciplines come in and then move back out into their silos, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
And I just, so on that interdisciplinary subject, we're still fundamentally, it seems, talking about making. So people who make things, they like using maybe using their hands, and whether it's fashion or cutting something from a CNC machine, it's still the kind of physical act of making. Can you talk about how maybe if we're talking about something that's really interdisciplinary, about how other subjects might be involved? So what about something like economics or business? How does the Fab Lab make sure that those are taken into account?
question.
It's a good question. Industry, maybe. Okay. Well, one example is at the moment we were talking about it earlier. We're running a paper with a group of students, some spatial design students. There's an industrial design student in there as well, and we're developing exhibition design structure. Now, it's relatively kind of ambitious and innovative in the way that it uses materials, and this particular type of material that we're interested in using, we communicated that out, and we said, okay, we're using this material to various kind of industry people that can provide this. And one particular kind of company, Ortex, picked up on the fact that we were wanting to use their material in an innovative way. And so they're sponsoring the product now. And, you know, who knows what will come out of it. We might develop a kind of a new process in the way that the material can be used. We're working with their design engineer, who's incredibly generous with making sure that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel with some of the processes that we're using. So in a way, you know, this little kind of team of students in Fab Lab Wellington become a little kind of bit of an R&D department, which is, and there's this reciprocal relationship where they're sponsoring the material and we're playing with it with that freedom. And so there's that connection there between industry and the creativity and innovations that happen within the lab.
And what also? Oh, go on, Wendy.
Oh, I was going to say that also recently we've had quite a strong change in our curriculum, and we've been connected with NASAD, which is an American organisation of art and design schools. And part of that has meant that our curriculum has opened up to a broader range of students. So where, as you say, if I'm a management student, I might be able to join a project like this and actually take on a project management role and start absorbing some of the processes and systems around the School of Design, as well as supporting, you know, the project within the Fab Lab, and then, you know, maybe start being one of those people that hasn't really necessarily thought of themselves as a maker, but becoming more comfortable in that space and hopefully becoming a maker.
And what do the businesses that you work with get out of that? Is this something? So one of the things we heard from Jean-Michel was around Fab Connections and what they're trying to do with Fab Economy. From your perspective, what's in it for a business that you work with? They often have lots of money. They could probably prototype something in their own R&D space. Is there something else they're tapping into with working with Fab Labs?
They're tapping into what we do here is really a microcosm of what Jean-Michel is talking about, in that we are able to join together and bring together a broader range of people than maybe a particular company has. And what they do when they engage with us is they step outside their own culture and invite a broader view, and quite often one of the things that they're saying to us is that they want, you know, innovation, creativity. They want young people, a new vision, and that's what we can offer.
So it's open. When you engage with one person within the Fab Lab network, you're not actually really engaging with one person at all. You're engaging with a kind of the portal to a very, very broad, open body of knowledge where everybody's. And we've found that because of the time zone differences that we have, sometimes it can be considered a disadvantage, but it really is an advantage, because when we have kind of finished and we might have an issue and we haven't figured something out, we can send out an email, we'll go to bed, and the rest of the world's, you know, just getting up as we're snoozing, and we wake up in the morning, there's 5 different kind of ways to attempt to kind of resolve perhaps an issue. Yeah.
So I'd like to pick up on that. The Fab Lab network has been described in a number of ways, but I've heard a couple of people that we've spoken to, even in the past couple of weeks, refer to it as this giant brain, which I think is a great analogy. And part of the when we talk about how interdisciplinary is the Fab Lab network, that it is, when you get the zoomed out view, that seems to be where a lot of the benefit is. So again, with Fab Economy, they put together these teams of people to take on business challenges by handpicking expertise from across the network. But how does how is communication? How does that work across such a vast network? It is decentralized. It's quite informal in some senses. How are the insights that are developed captured, used? Is there a danger of people just making the same mistakes if those insights and knowledge about materials or design isn't captured and shared?
Mm. I mean, yes, it's a brain, but it's also a family. And one of the aspects of the charter is that we do need to be involved with the network and be part of that family and give to the family and give back. Oh, crikey, that sounds a bit cultish, doesn't it? but and so, and you'll appreciate that you went to our most recent conference, and it's really, it's dynamic, it's huge. We're all making contact with often people that, for Stuart and I, and some of the others from Fab Lab Wellington, that we've only met via Skype or Google Hangouts or via the MCU, which we've got on in the background at the moment. I think, and also the network has grown exponentially. Since we joined, we were about 130th, the 130th lab, and now there's 435 as last time I checked. And so that's probably one of the big challenges is making sure that we are all connecting and communicating and supporting. And one of the good things that's come out recently is that there's been more regional networks established. So there were two networks that we set up while we were at Fab 10, and one of them was Fab Antipodes, which is about connecting Australia and New Zealand and hopefully the Pacific when the Pacific engages with this Fab Lab network. But also Fab Universities, which is a space where we can start talking more and more about how we collaborate across spaces like engineering and design in a more detailed and comprehensive way.
We've actually had a question from Dale about that. So he said, how do you see the Fab Lab network developing in New Zealand? Has there been interest from other universities? So one of the things that comes out is that that universities do see the benefits of these spaces. Is that something you're seeing develop more widely?
I'm actually going. I'm getting on a plane after we finish talking to be involved with the opening of a new Fab Lab in Christchurch, which is a community-based Fab Lab, and then the other most recent business that opened a Fab Lab in Auckland, so that covers all sort of the three main centres of New Zealand, is Diamond Age Solutions, who one of the founders of the company was part of developing the RepRap machines and was in the Fab 10 documentary, Vic Oliver. So at the moment,
with recycled filaments as well. Is that the?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's fantastic. The whole team there is fantastic. And so what we've got also is a number of businesses, regional businesses or startups or community-based, as well as university and technical colleges coming to visit me and talking to us at Fab Lab Wellington to see how they can bring that back to their community and in what way it's going to be appropriate for them to use it.
So New Zealand is actually a little bit of a kind of a slither of an example of all the different types of Fab Labs you can have when we're talking about community-based, university-based, and business-based. We kind of operate across all three. Yeah, across the spectrum there.
We've had a number of universities feature as part of the festival in our big top 10 section. Stu, are you able to just explain. So you said before that you're on the kind of teaching faculty. Are you able to just say a bit about how the Fab Lab came about to be integrated with that? So not all universities obviously have a Fab Lab. What advice maybe would you give to those wanting to set one up?
Become part of the network and start to be involved with it at the kind of maybe from a outsider's level and get a kind of feel for what's going on. I guess there probably wouldn't be a design school or architecture school anywhere that wouldn't have a 3D printer, that wouldn't have a CNC machine, that wouldn't have these things. So in a lot of ways, they already have all the tools there. So I think really it's not about the tools at all, and we keep on saying this, and we don't want to sound culturist, but it is really about the people, it is really about the community, and it is about the network. So as an entry point, perhaps, if you're an academic institution, try to participate in some of the kind of activities that Fab Lab offers out there. Just get a kind of feel and a sense for it, and I think very quickly that the value would be revealed, and that being part of a network and a kind of that bigger brain is something that is, it's incredibly important, and education is moving more and more towards this idea of kind of open source knowledge with online teaching and resources being out there. We run a lot of our courses through blogs that are kind of out in the world, and we share kind of tutorials to a certain degree. So here in the College of Creative Arts, we're about kind of sharing the knowledge much externally as we are internally as well. So,
thanks. To those of you who are watching online, don't forget you can send your questions in for me to put to the guys out at Fab Lab Wellington. You can either use the Hangout Q&A app, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. If you haven't clicked Be Part of the Conversation yet, and you're watching on thinkdiff.co, then click that and you'll see the Q&A app where you can ask questions, or you can use hashtag thinkdiff on Twitter, and we'll find your questions and ask them. I just wanted to look at some of the kind of wider questions maybe around Fab Labs and the wider impact. It's something that we're really interested in. So in terms of the breakdown of people who come to your lab, how much diversity is there really? Again, a lot of what when we speak to maybe other people or people watching on the festival, they might have some assumptions of the sort of people that use Fab Labs. How much diversity is there really among age and gender, and who are the sort of people that have the time to go to them? Is it people that are doing it in their spare time? It's more of a hobby thing, or is it people wanting to kind of be educated, or the people that want to use it maybe for job prospects?
It's a combination of all of those, but you're right. Most of the time that we're open, it's during the working day, and so people who are working have to find other times. We run night classes, and we also have a regular event called Maker Monday, and we have people coming along who are thinking, I'm actually a little bit stuck in where I am in my career, and maybe this is an opportunity for me to start looking at other spaces to work in, as well as people who are just, as you do with a night class, you go along for 8 weeks and you learn some new things, and obviously it's integrated completely within the university and the School of Design, so a huge proportion of our users are either the staff or the students within Massey.
Mm-hmm. And is there a question around qualifications? So traditionally we see things when you're learning, you do that maybe to get a qualification that you can put on a CV and enhance your job prospects. Is that something that is kind of offered if I went along to your Fab Lab, that I could get something that I could put on a resume, or is that something that isn't maybe important to the people that use the lab?
Yes, you can get a qualification at Fab Lab Wellington, actually, and next year will be the first time you'll be able to, and because we'll be running Fab Academy, which is operated centrally through MIT. Stuart and I are both graduates of the program, so we're really excited to be able to offer that next year. And some of the students that will be doing that are people who are coming from other countries, specifically to be in New Zealand and to be at Fab Lab Wellington. And some of them will be doing their master's study alongside doing it, and others are just doing it because it's not full time. They can do it to fit around just quite a flexible workload, within the Fab Academy diploma, you can do a number of certificates as well. So you can do the diploma over a longer or a shorter period of time.
Yeah, so the diploma of digital fabrication. We're really excited to be running that and bringing in as many people from overseas to come and experience the country as well, because it's a fantastic opportunity to get a slice of this side of the world. But also thinking about, it's not about pieces of paper and qualifications. I mean, in an art and design context, often, people are looking at your portfolio. And so when you're evidencing these things that are created out of a lab using digital fabrication technologies, and that's what's exciting. I mean, you can have a certificate in laser cutting, and it's not really, anybody could really have that, but it's the way that it's used and the way that it's applied creatively. I think that's the really exciting part. So, yeah.
So some questions coming in that are related to what you've just been saying. I will start with the one about the geography. So that's one from Dale, who said, when he thinks of Wellington, he thinks of Weta Workshop, who did all the effects modeling and making for Lord of the Rings movies, and I'm sure he's seen some of the viral airplane safety videos that have been doing the rounds as well. Do you engage with independent workshops such as Weta? And maybe there's a broader question there. The maker movement is bigger than Fab Labs. Do Fab Labs engage with the other types of makespace? And how does that mosaic work when you run a Fab Lab?
Yeah, our broader community in New Zealand is full of all sorts of spaces that are hacker spaces, maker spaces. In Wellington, we have a really well-served community with a maker space down the road and a community-based collaboration lab that we work together with. So recently we had a Mechatronics Hackathon. We hosted it here in combination with the CoLab, which was funded by the community council. The council, Grow Wellington, to connect industry with creative, digitally onto it people. And Weta Workshops, a lot of people that work there are from here.
Yeah, a lot of our graduates end up working at Weta Workshop, which isn't really a surprise and is amazing. But thinking about the geography of things, we are so geographically isolated that, something goes wrong and we need to get something in. Quite often it has to come from the other side of the world, and so we often have to be innovative, but also it's part of being a kind of a community. Like Wellington really is a village, and so if you need something physically and you need it quickly, you can often just put a call out and people will respond, and kind of we help each other out just because of that kind of geographic isolation. Yeah.
Vic was saying, so you mentioned Vic Oliver earlier, who was involved with the RepRap project. He was saying in Barcelona that exactly the same thing. So I think he was describing how he can make a nozzle for a 3D printer, and someone from a different lab said, "Oh, well, why would you want to make one? You can just order them; they don't cost much." and he said, well, if you have to order them, they do take a while to get there. So if I need a new one, I learned how to make it. So that clearly is a factor that maybe others in Europe or in the States don't appreciate.
That's a great point, Joe. We just did something the other day. Rather than ordering something from America, we actually whipped up a 3D model and vacuum formed a replacement. Yeah, and which we will probably share with the rest of the community, because there's other places like have the same trouble with getting things into their own country, or the expense of getting something from a first world country means that it's prohibitive, and so. Yeah,
and that's something that has been mentioned before about making, or about this idea of the prosumer. So, someone not just being a consumer of stuff, but producing from their home or workshop as well. And we heard from a guy in a session about 3D printing yesterday, who, when asked around about the what sort of things you can make, I think he gave a demonstration of something he'd made recently, an adapter and sort of nozzle for his vacuum cleaner. I think he'd lost the adapter previously, so he made a replacement by himself. It often comes up, intellectual property and ownership, whether this sort of practices infringe on intellectual property, and what the impact of that is. We had a question that related to that from Colin, who said, in collaborative situations, do your users ever clash over the ownership of an idea, and what advice would you have in those situations?
Ownership of an idea, okay.
That is a good one. In terms of the Fab Charter, people that use this space understand that it is about a sharing space. And I suppose, especially after some years of practice in the world, you do understand that your idea isn't your idea. You got it from somewhere else. And often sharing your idea as you're developing it makes it a much better idea than if you were hiding it. And so I don't think that I've had any situation like that. When we make arrangements with businesses in terms of them protecting their IP, sometimes it might be that if we're doing something particularly sensitive, we might actually close the lab to other people for that time. But we also say that if we've discovered anything in terms of processes that would be useful to other Fab Lab users, we arrange with them that would be shared within the environment. So I think that the conversations that we have establish the culture around that, so that it is less likely to come to a point where there is a clash. Having said that, there's still opportunity for that in the future, but hopefully we can deal with that really well.
But of course, from an art and design context, our kind of ultimate goal really is, in most ways, is we want people to experience, view, and kind of covet what we produce. So we want to show the rest of the world what's there. And I think that if we start to think about the vacuum cleaner attachment, now there's a real emotional connection to that vacuum cleaner, and that vacuum cleaner, I've made that part, and perhaps that product will become that much more sustainable. Because you're more likely to kind of hang on to it for a long period of time and probably talk about it to other people. So there's an emotional connection to that as well, which you can't underestimate.
And I agree that is important, and we speak with people like iFixit. I don't know if you're familiar with the group iFixit, who have seen that repairing products increases maybe the attachment to it. So if I repair my phone once, I'm maybe more likely to hang on to it for longer. I might buy from that manufacturer again. But it's interesting maybe to get your view on where you see yourselves and Fab Labs in this shift. So we are hearing from a number of different sources that intellectual property is being kind of undermined in different areas, and it's affecting big businesses, small businesses. But do you see that as and do you see it as a problem, or something that's already happening and it can't be stopped?
It's also an opportunity, Joe, where maybe the standard practices of businesses, which are fairly recent in many ways, where you make an object and sell it to people, and then they throw it away, and you get them to buy another one. In the past, there were things like watchmakers who also fixed your watches, and there's opportunities there where businesses can look at a longer relationship with the consumer, where, and I get that sort of stuff from cradle to cradle and things like that. I think there's some really great opportunities for people to start looking at different ways of operating businesses, and you were just talking about that with music before we started talking about how you engage with how everybody's stealing music.
Oh yeah, with Iron Maiden in their
maybe you just want to repeat that that little anecdote as a reference point.
Yeah. We're just thinking. I'm pretty sure it's Iron Maiden, but they looked at Napster or something. They kind of geolocated where the majority of their music was being downloaded illegally to. And that dictated where they were going to do their next world tour. And so they realised they had this kind of fan base there. It was so popular, so it's like, well, that's where we're going to turn up. We're going to give them the live experience because you can't download that. So I think that's an interesting way of thinking. But also, what our designers, artists and designers here are now kind of starting to think about, especially in the design school, is that you might be designing a detail, you might be designing a process, and not necessarily a product, but you're still designing that, and then that's what you're giving over, and so that's really exciting, and the students have been exposed to that more and more, especially in the online world, where perhaps you can now customize the graphic on the bottom of your skateboard, and then that's kind of printed on there or etched on there and sent to you, and you can do it with shoes as well now, custom design. So it might be, I think the emerging designers are thinking like that now, and so they're thinking about designing processes in that way. So it's not just about designing product or objects, it's designing the way that the prosumer can kind of engage and leverage the idea that we were talking about before, that emotional connection to something, which therefore makes it more sustainable. Yeah.
We've moved nicely onto something else I wanted to speak about, which is about the circular economy side of things. So you say on the Fab Lab website that you engage with kind of circular principles, and Wendy, you were mentioning about cradle to cradle and the C2C design principles. We've had a question in that says, do you or how would you introduce your users to circular design principles to ensure they're working at the cutting edge? So if you bring these circular concepts into the lab, how do you put them across, and how are they received?
One of the ways, probably our first real experiment in that, was running an open design paper where we had students working in teams, mixed discipline teams, and examining a whole series of online libraries such as Thingiverse, and looking for designs that had potential but that maybe they could add some value to. And so each group chose an object that they wanted to work with, picked it up, brought it into the lab, played around with it, redesigned it, and then put it up for someone else to reiterate. And that was really successful, and quite a few of those students since then have been frequently putting their work up, because they're in this really lovely position at the moment of being able to share their ideas without necessarily needing to get a financial recompense. But but it's giving them a level of satisfaction that they're not just doing the work and it's just for school and it's just and now that project's finished, that project's still live, people are looking at it, people are playing with it and telling them, oh, this is what we did with it. So that's one example of where that circular design was really effective.
Oh, sorry, fine. I had someone just come in to pass me a very interesting question that I'm going to put to you in just a moment. One of our own team, but I just on that question of kind of circular design, customization, and adapting other designs. Does a Fab Lab could a Fab Lab just increase the speed at which we use materials, or maybe not just a Fab Lab, but a this idea of a prosumer or decentralized manufacturing? So if more people are making stuff, more people chucking stuff out, I customize it because it's fashionable now, and then maybe I see something out, the fashion changes, and I want to customize again and have a different version. Could a Fab Lab increase the throughput of materials in the economy?
Absolutely. But then again, ideally, we're working on systems with our materials where we hope to have a circular system, and in one particular one we're able to, where we're moulding, cutting wax, using it for moulds, melting it down, using it again and again and again, so that we're traditionally you'd use a hard material. When you're finished with the mould, you'd throw it away. People are able to save themselves some money, save the world some rubbish, and ideally we'll have the same. We've got our composting system set up with our very clean wood waste, but ideally we'll also be able to do things with the PLA, plastic from 3D printers, where people make things and they bring them back and we either compost them or set them up for reuse. So I think that's a really great question, because it is something that we consider all the time about what sort of footprint we are creating. As Stuart said, with the Prague Quadrennial project, we're thinking about the travelling of our materials or the objects that we create for this. But also within the lab and within our smaller community. And we ran a waste minimisation paper last semester, and we had some work with the Aalto University, Cindy Kultala, who's an expert in sustainability.
I met her out in Barcelona, and she's doing some interesting work around the materials knowledge as well.
Yes, well, she graciously offered to get up very early in the morning for our students and gave them a really great session on product systems and services to give them an international context that backed up essentially what we were doing. And they worked to develop a way to, in different areas of our university, to minimise waste, and one of them in particular focused on the Fab Lab. But each student group came up with a different range of solutions, which were really exciting.
And one word that I saw on your website, which is seems to have grown in popularity in the past year or two, is resilience. And could you just explain in what context you use that word resilience, why it might be important, and how your projects would kind of reinforce that?
I do this one?
Yes, you can.
Okay. As you can appreciate, the other name for New Zealand, apart from Aotearoa, is the Shaky Isles. We have a lot of earthquakes, we have volcanoes, have a number of possible natural disasters, and so I think that's where we started particularly using it. There was a large series of large earthquakes in the South Island that really got a lot of people thinking about how to be resilient, but also resilience within a community, a business, an environment. It's probably partly an alternative to sustainability because it's such a broad brush, the word sustainability often, and in some ways I think that we chose resilience as a stronger word, and so we talk about it in terms of we were involved with part of the research with the open source beehives project, which you've heard of, and resilience for us means to like the bees and having food, as well as having minimising our waste, to being able to economically support ourselves. So it's a really a big word.
So if we're thinking about big issues, even though we're kind of small, that we can, you know, we can kind of persevere, and we can kind of push at those. And if issues are too big, you know, they can be overwhelming. So it just kind of pushing forward with those in kind of small steps, which is exactly what we're doing on lots of different levels. So
it seems like as you say, Wendy, the word resilience is used and suggests maybe a more of an adaptability than some other terms. So not just maybe just doing less stuff or using less, but adapting what you do so that it can work, but immediately and in the long term.
And that's partly also why we got involved with the WikiHouse New Zealand project when they were first starting out a couple of years ago, about the same time, because a lot of what they're talking about comes from their experience in Christchurch, and about resilient housing, you know, being able to survive a major disaster.
We have 3 questions left that I want to get to. We've got about 10 minutes, and I think that should work out quite nicely. So the one I was passed from my colleague who said, in yesterday's 3D printing session, and this kind of goes back to one of the topics we already discussed, but it's a good a good conundrum. The guy said that there was a real risk in us producing our own spare parts unless we understand the material science. He spoke of a lawnmower part made of nylon and thus capable of withstanding heat it would be subjected to. Print that out of the wrong plastic and you risk an accident. So how can Fab Labs help us overcome problems like these?
Actually, Joe, when you said our own spare parts, I thought you meant kidneys and lungs and hearts.
Well, maybe in a few years.
Yes, I know, but just to distract you from that question, I think that's kind of scary to me that we will produce our own spare parts, but it's also really exciting.
But these are the areas that maybe there needs, and this is again something that's come up in all the discussions with Fab Labs and with Jeremy Rifkin, with Mark Miodownik, other people we've spoken to. Does there need to be some standards or regulation around this sort of thing? People are in labs or workshops like yours experimenting, and they might go home with a spare part for their lawnmower pretty chuffed, but it could have a safety implication.
Yeah. But anyone can buy a 3D printer, really, and anybody can print whatever they want with it. But I do see an emerging problem, and that's actually something that I'm interested in, and that there's starting to emerge a disconnect between an intuitive understanding of materials and how they behave, and that's emerged out of the digital fabrication, where people are drawing things on the computer in 3D, and then rather than carving them out of a piece of material or being really kind of understanding them or casting them, they are 3D printing them or they are CNC machining them. So there is definitely kind of this gap there, and perhaps that's, I don't know, we could absolutely play a role, but I think it's about going, okay, well, there's this established workflow where we can just go from computer to machine. Now, how do we mitigate that kind of intermediate kind of gap that's emerging? And that could be a hardware software kind of thing that happens, or it just could be just a kind of a education thing. Maybe the network needs to start looking at how we deal with that. Yeah.
One just a reference for people who maybe interested in that subject. The Institute of Making, who participated in the festival earlier on, have launched a materials library. It's an app, and it's also on their website. If you just Google Institute of Making Materials Library, and they're attempting to document information about all the different materials that they have in their library. It seems to me as an area where those increasing levels of knowledge and information about materials could support people in the making process.
Yeah, maybe a physics engine attached to a piece of software before it goes into a 3D printer could be something interesting. But yeah, somehow getting that kind of haptic understanding and connection and developing an intuitive sense of how materials behave and react is only really something you can get with experience and practice. So
that's definitely something that's come across. 7 minutes left. 2 questions. Just going back to the education side, which we kind of come around to the topics we started out on. So one question mark from Colin, who said, does the formalization of the process, so through the Fab Academy, detract from what he describes as a more free and easy nature of Fab Labs? So if you previously it was more about going in and experimenting and trying things out, does making it accredited and making there some formalization to that process, does that detract from that at all, or can the two carry on simultaneously?
Oh, definitely simultaneously. I think, I mean, essentially the Fab Labs came out of a formal educational environment, how to make almost anything, a paper that Neil Gershenfeld was running. But also, for some people, it works really well to work within an imposed structure to develop their ideas. So yeah, I can see where the question's coming from, but they don't cancel each other out. Both those opportunities are still available.
And I think the wonderful thing about the Fab Academy is that there's these modules where you have to kind of follow through and complete a process within the lab. And often when you're just playing around, you might not actually end up going to that point because you don't need to. So if you're directed there and you explore this kind of new process, all of a sudden that opens up all the potential for that to be applied in another way. So it's upskilling you in how to play really well.
Thank you. And the final question, also on education, you said that next year sees the first Fab Academy from Fab Lab Wellington, and Jules says, do you think the range of education and training programs will increase with Fab Labs? So currently, am I right in thinking there's just how to make almost anything? And is there a vision for this?
Oh, there is. Yes. There's a huge amount of interest in biohacking and connecting that with the Fab Academy and just with Fab Labs in general, which kind of comes back to that question about materials that you asked before. So there's definitely an interest from a lot of the people in the Fab Lab network to broaden the offerings, but to go to the cutting edge and go further.
Thank you very much. We've got we're coming up to the 7 o'clock mark here in the UK. It's just getting to breakfast time for Wendy and Stu. So both of you, thank you so much for answering so many great questions, both some from my own curiosity and some from our audience watching from the UK and around the world on the Disruptive Innovation Festival. It's been an absolute pleasure having you online. Thank you for waking up at probably before the crack of dawn to join me, and for sharing your insights about the role of Fab Labs in education and to the wider economy.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you for the great questions.
Thanks. I'd just like to bring our viewers' attention to a couple of sessions we have coming up. We are on the penultimate day of the Disruptive Innovation Festival. We've got one more day of live events left before we shift into really a 30-day catch-up period. But in terms of the live events, tomorrow we continue on our Fab Lab trip with two really interesting sessions. One on 3D printing with potato-based filaments. That's from Fab Lab Breda, probably a project that Wendy and Stu have heard about in the past. And then finally, we have if you want to find out about 3D printing with potatoes, that's from 1 to 2 p.m. GMT. And then at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. GMT, we have exploring medical customization in the developing world through material ecology. So this is someone who applied through our Smart Cycles Challenge on the Disruptive Innovation Festival and is looking at the implications of printing with waste material. So lots of the topics that we've discussed today around material safety will again be dissected tomorrow. So I hope you can join me for some of the sessions then. But for now, thanks for joining this session at the Disruptive Innovation Festival, and we will see you again soon.